Hey everyone, Jejen here, and this one is a different video. For the last few weeks, I have been messing around with some customs. Before this, I have always tried to review products that you can buy in the market readily, but as I have progressed through the hobby, I realized that I would inevitably need to buy limited run keyboards to be able to try other things. This channel has always been a reflection of what I currently find interesting in the hobby, so I do hope to share with you the keyboards that I am currently working on. Quick one before we start, only 7% of my viewers are subscribed, so if you like the content, please do consider subscribing. It helps me out a lot, and click on the bell icon so you don't miss an upload. Okay, so this will not be an extensive review since it can be at times tiring to look at a keyboard at every angle and break it down part by part. Sometimes it can really feel like work, and this is what I do to get away from work, so I want to balance it out a bit. This video will focus more on my personal preferences and what I like about this keyboard. The keyboard for today is the KBDfans D60. And the reason that I bought it was, I wanted to try HHKB. This is an aluminum gasket mount keyboard from KBDfans. I think this was run as a group buy, but KBDfans has been restocking it on their website this last few days, so you may still be able to get your hands on it. Full disclosure, this review is not sponsored and I bought this keyboard with my own money in the aftermarket. I got it at quite a good discount from the original $320 price tag. That's one of the things that can be good and bad with KBDfans. You can get in-stock kits, but the value of the keyboard depreciates if you want to resell it. Limited run keyboards can still command good prices in the market since there is a limited amount available. That's just plain economics. I got the white HHKB layout. There is also a Win keyless and a 65% version of the keyboard. The design is quite simple yet elegant, and I do have a soft spot for black and white colorways. From the top, the design is quite straightforward, no accent at all. The bezel at the top is quite wide to accommodate the gaskets. The corners are rounded and the edges are chamfered. No blemishes on the finish, which has been consistent with the cases that I have had coming from KBDfans. The case is basically a wedge with accents. The side is where the D60 shows a bit of complexity. The white top case gives way to the black bottom case and this bronze accent piece. The USB Type-C socket is recessed within a circular cutout at the left side of the keyboard. It's a shame they didn't use a daughter board for the USB socket. This deep indentation was a compromise since the top bezel on the keyboard meant that the PCB was pushed deep into the case. It's okay since they designed for it, but I can't help but wish that they just had a daughter board. At the back, there is an aluminum weight with a dragonfly logo, which is fine. The appeal of the HHKB layout is how symmetrical it is, especially if you use keycaps where the mods have different colors. I see why people like it, but I am quite neutral with the layout. I won't go out of my way to get an HHKB, but it is also not a deal breaker for me. Using the layout needs a bit of getting used to, but I believe that any decent keyboard layout can work as long as you commit to it and give it time. You would need to adjust to the loss of the arrow keys. The backspace is also placed here, which is actually better in my opinion, but prepare to hit the backslash key incorrectly when you go back to the regular layout. I know this is not the way to do it, but I also placed the control keys on the lower corners just to lessen the adjustment. And it's a bit awkward to use since it's only one unit, but that's entirely my fault for being stubborn about the layout. Going to the typing experience, it's stiff. You would usually expect a decent amount of flex when using a gasket mount keyboard, and this one barely has any. I initially used this the way the first owner set it up, with all the standoffs and all the foam with a polycarbonate plate. I was quite surprised at how stiff it was and how muted the keyboard sounded. The stabs were also rattling, so I decided to change the stabs with some Durock V2s. I also used some Durock L7s that were lubed and filmed by channel sponsor Science Studios PH, and it saved me a lot of time. Because to be honest, I find lubing a bit too tedious, and I'm really happy that you can buy them like this, lubed and filmed out of the box. You can check them out on the links below. Opening up the keyboard, you see that this is your typical foam sandwich gasket mount with foam strips on 8 places. The original owner placed the gaskets on the plate. I would have preferred to place it on the case, but this one is fine. There are 10 points for the standoffs and I removed all of them, hoping that gives the keyboard a bit more flex. The height of the keyboard is just right. I like my keyboards relatively low, so I don't strain my hands too much on long gaming sessions, and this was alright. I'm not sure though if the non-existent flex on the plate was a trade-off with having a relatively low keyboard. This is the first sound test without any standoffs. The Durock L7s are quite smooth and a bit high-pitched, giving it that clacky sound. The mods, however, do sound a bit hollow. I usually prefer deeper sounding boards, but I have started to appreciate clacky keyboards recently. Removing the standoffs brought out the sound of the switches more, but it did not help with the flex at all. Removing the case foam gives you a bit of room for the PCB assembly to flex, but it will make the keyboard sound a bit more hollow. My guess was that there was just too much gasket foam on the construction and it is being compressed a lot. Almost the entire perimeter of the plate was surrounded by foam, so I wanted to test a setup with lesser gaskets. For this one, I bought an FR4 plate from KBDfans. This is my first time trying out an FR4 plate, so I was quite excited. However, the measurements on the plate were quite bad. The cutouts for the switches were too tight and it was a nightmare trying to put in the keycaps. I had to file some of it and it helped a bit, though it was still tight. I also decided to put in only 4 gaskets, hoping that it would make the keyboard a bit more flexible, but it was still stiff. Here's the second sound test with the FR4 plate. So as you heard, the second build was actually quite clacky, and I prefer it over the polycarbonate one. The upstroke really sounds nice. The typing feel was quite similar, though the FR4 just felt a tad bit stiffer. If you want a softer typing feel, polycarbonate is the way, but FR4 sounds nice, so I'll keep it in for the meantime. The spacebar was a bit inconsistent. It felt a bit tight with the FR4 plate. I may need to go back and file it again, but it's okay for the meantime. So, judgment time. Do I think the keyboard is worth it, and will I be keeping it? Well, I do think it is a good keyboard. For $320, you get a nice looking gasket mount keyboard that sounds okay. With most aluminum group buys starting at $400, I am quite happy that this keyboard exists for those who are budget conscious and don't like waiting for group buys. However, there are some compromises. The keyboard can sound hollow depending on your setup, and mounting is still quite stiff. Again, I think it is a good keyboard for the price, and if you don't mind not having flex in your keyboard, this is a good kit. For me, personally, I would rather add an additional $100 to get a keyboard that has lesser compromises. But that's just me. Make decisions based on your own personal preferences. I will be keeping this one for the meantime, but I will probably sell it once I find another keyboard that I don't need. And that is it for this video. Hopefully you enjoyed this slightly different format. Feel free to comment down below what you think, and I hope I have helped you in deciding whether this is the keyboard for you. See you on the next one. Bye!